What is consciousness? And what does it mean to truly live life awake? Welcome to Clarity to Consciousness, a podcast where we transcend beyond stereotypes, embracing a deeper understanding. I'm your host, Kristen Griffiths, a fellow seeker on this path. Join me on a journey as we dive into conversations with experts, unraveling stigmas, and expanding our awareness to something profound. This is your invitation to open your mind with me as together we bring clarity to the fascinating complexities of human consciousness. Welcome back to Clarity to Consciousness, where we explore the complexities of human consciousness. I'm your host, Kristen Leigh Griffiths, and today we're going to dive into a topic that many might find deeply personal, yet profoundly universal, which is spiritual shame. And this refers to the guilt, sometimes embarrassment, or even fear tied to embracing spirituality in a society that often dismisses it as quote-unquote woo-woo or unscientific. I know that living and working in an environment where I am in a scientific space, everything that I work on, a lot of the projects that I work on, these need to be fact-checked and reviewed by legal and medical and our regulatory teams. It's something that I deal with every single day, and I often am very aware of the way I feel about the topic of spirituality. And it's something that I find myself hiding a lot, and I don't bring it up a lot in the day-to-day world, even though it's a passion of mine and I love it. And so this is why I'm so excited to talk to my guest today. Her name is Dr. Sandra Solano, and she's a physician with over 25 years of experience in the public health and preventative medicine area. She is the founder of Integro Restore, where she masterfully integrates science and holistic practices to promote whole person wellness. Sandra's journey from traditional medicine to embracing spirituality and holistic healing is a testament to her courage and authenticity in bridging these two worlds. Sandra, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Kristen. What an honor to be here with you.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Would you mind giving everybody a little bit more info on your background as a physician and what inspired your transition into holistic wellness?
Well, I think that there was always a piece of me that understood that we are just not divided in pieces. We're not just little mechanical body parts to be fixed individually and separately from the whole. That's why I decided to study public health and preventive medicine, because I felt that as a clinician, I was just addressing the symptoms of the problem, not the problem. That the problem was in the environment, in the food that we ate, in the water we drink, in activity that we had. So that's what brought me here to Ohio to pursue preventive medicine and public health as my specialty. And I was very successful. I work at many levels of the healthcare system in very high level positions, all the way to the governor's office. And then I burned out. As many of us, we thought like, well, that was just a grunt job. That was just not what I wanted to really be doing. So if I just shift my job and change my work circumstances, then that's going to be different. For me, it was important also to be able to be a mom. And I was like, I cannot be working 60, 70 hours a week. So I started working as a consultant in Appalachia, doing preventive programs in mental health and obesity that allowed me a lot of flexibility. I was able to work around my daughter's schedules, everything that you will have thought it was the perfect life. I joke saying I had the house, the family, the 2 girls, and the dog. I had it all. And yet I burned out again. So there was something in me that was like, well, maybe it's not the job. Maybe there's something else that needs to be addressed. And I started seeking alternatives. But obviously being a data person, being a scientist, I was looking for something that had data behind it. And initially what just began to be allowed into my consciousness was the concept of mindfulness. And in a moment of crisis, I Googled mindful spa, and then I landed 3 days later in Tucson, Arizona, thinking I was going to be doing some yoga, which I had started doing a little bit of practice of yoga. And somebody was going to teach me how to meditate, and then I was going to be drinking by the pool for 10 days. That was the plan. And instead, I was welcomed with this package of activities that had been programmed for me. And I could not even understand the names of some of the things. They were weird things like Reiki. Like, what the heck is this? And I felt like this is the worst mistake. This is just crazy people. And these are crazy things. And but I had paid for it. The shuttle drops you in the ranch and it leaves. So I was trapped in the desert. And I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to be with these hippies, crazy people for the week. And I was exposed to many modalities, and the reality is that something happened. My first session was a sound session, a sound bath, which I had never experienced. And feeling the vibration of the balls and feeling what my nervous system did through that experience, I was like, wow, this is crazy. That something happened, and it kind of be magic. And that was kind of like thing after thing. My reaction was like, there's something here, I can understand it. So I desperately wanted to understand the science behind it because I could not believe that was magic. So in that pursuit of science, I started researching, studying, attending conferences, doing workshops, becoming trained in many modalities. But that's where the shame of all this started to rising to the top, right? What are people going to think about me?
Yeah.
Already being a public health physician was seen like I chose the last rung of the ladder of the possible physician world. And some people were like, but you are not even an actual physician. So imagine if I start doing energy medicine or start saying sound has power and I want to be a sound practitioner. Or, hey, you can just harness the power of the heart and being able to change your physiology. Or there is energy that flows through our bodies that I can feel and help you clear and facilitate. It was a feeling of like all that I have done, all the credibility that I had gotten was going to be thrown away, that people were going to be looking at me like I had gone crazy. And it was a lot of self-judgment and a lot of fear of being open about this practice. So I started doing it almost like in secret. I started putting a little toe and, just friends and family. And many of them were like, well, this is amazing. But are you sure you want to do this? Is crazy, right? And I later came to realize it was my own judgment for other practitioners that were not doing traditional medicine. That was now being reflected back to me. But also that I had separated and I had experience of spirituality only being through church. So I also was having this fear that, oh my gosh, I'm going to end up in a cult. This has to be because the only way that you can experience spirituality, in my experience until that moment, was within the structure of a church. And if you were not an official church, you were some kind of cult. So there was a lot that I have to handle to be here with you today, openly talking about this.
Yeah. Did you face any specific challenges where you really struggled with that spiritual shame?
Yes. So I hired a business consultant. Once I was like, you know what? I know something that changed my life and I want other people to have this. I want to be able to empower people with these tools and let people know there's different ways to do things that are scientifically based, even though they may not be going through the evidence-based double-blind study scientific analysis that was my bloodline, right? And part of the exercise of with the business coach was to say, well, what did you do? And I absolutely could not ever imagine my name being on top of something that said energy medicine. So printed out my business cards with the name of my company, my name, and nothing else. Like, this is the phone number and nothing else. And then I went to this networking group, which I had never done anything like that. I always was an employee or had my own company, but I didn't have to do the sales of the company. So I got up in this networking group and I have to get up and you have to do this little 20-second introduction of, I'm like, okay, this is great practice. And I had practiced trying to explain what I did or what I wanted to be doing. And I had different scripts. And when it was my turn, I got up and said, my name is Sandra Solano, and I have no idea what I do.
Oh my gosh. Oh man. Okay.
And I sat down and I wanted to cry. I felt like the worst. Like I was so embarrassed to say what I wanted to do. I felt everybody was going to think I was just crazy or stupid, or that I had come to the wrong meeting. Everybody has this very polished elevator speeches, and I just could not say anything that felt that I could say without embarrassment. And that's when I realized I really had to work on this.
Yeah. Wow. I understand. I mean, working in the medical field, it was a struggle to create this podcast. And it wasn't until I realized that the nag to want to do it outweighed the fear that I actually ended up pushing forward and doing it. But especially the first episode, I was so nervous to put that out. Part of me doesn't want to tell anybody that I'm doing it. But now it's almost like little by little, you just get that courage to continue on and continue to do it. And now, I'm trying to date and meet new people, and it's become a big part of my life. And so I have to tell people that I do a podcast, and, it's about spiritual type things. And occasionally people will ask to send a link so they can hear it. And, sometimes I don't hear from them again, but it's just something that you kind of have to become, at least for me, I'm just growing more comfortable with little by little.
Oh, I so appreciate that. And just actually what I call the integrated part of me is quite young in this 3-4 years, because then I went through the other side. I'm not going to tell anybody I'm a physician. Let me forget the last 25 years of my life, and just don't tell anybody about it. So that, because that was the other side, was that then I felt, well, I have to join this spiritual community. I start going to drum circles. I start going to Reiki chairs and just being in this spiritual world. And then I cannot tell them I'm a physician, because then I'm going to be shamed on the other side.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Well, I can understand that too. There's a lot of people in the spiritual community who I work in the pharmaceutical space, and that's not always accepted, especially these post-COVID years. So I feel like I have a foot in both worlds. Or like a double agent. Sometimes I call myself that. So I can totally relate. Were there any key turning points that solidified your decision to embrace spirituality alongside of your medical practices?
So I think the integration happened slowly. It wasn't like one point where I said, okay, both parts of me are important and they both bring different value, and I am going to be better by being integrated rather than hiding half of me in each circle. And it really was tool-based. It was not like I one day and I say oh, I'm going to integrate myself. It was a journey of using my own tools and my own practices in true evaluation of what in Harvard we call the vanities, which vanities were at play, which means which things I'm seeking from the outside that are needed in the inside, in which I have to become self-sourced. And it was about belonging, acceptance, safety, and connection. So I started a practice to create that from inner source, to find my safety not on how people react to me, but just in me working in my alignment and being aligned with my mission and with what my heart was calling me to do, to accept myself, all of it. And that's still an ongoing process. There were some parts of me, until a few weeks ago, I had really hidden so well that I just had a big jailbreak. They all appear. And to be able to just accept those parts and accept all of me as an important part of me, the ones that I like and the parts of me that I don't like, to be able to be connected to my mission, to my inner self, to my inner values. So changing those things from things that I was seeking from the outside, I was seeking approval from people, I was seeking connection from people, and move them into an inner work. So the more I'm able to do that, I feel like the more of me is showing up in the world and the more integrated I become. And it's an ongoing process. I have not fully conquered it, as I discovered a few weeks back.
Yeah, I had heard something recently, and I can't cite the source exactly, but it resonates with me, so I'll share it. But it's that authenticity is one of the most powerful, highest vibrational energies that there is. And for me, I've been thinking about that a lot lately, and I just think it's so applicable to this topic. But I think for me, what I'm going to do this year is really challenge myself to be more authentically me and show up more authentically in every interaction I can, because I want to harness that powerful energy of authenticity. I'm wondering how you would define spiritual shame, and why do you think it exists?
So I think that probably the definition would be very personal for everybody of how is their own experience of that. But in general, shame is the feeling that something is fundamentally wrong with you. So for me, the spiritual shame was that feeling that there was something fundamentally wrong with me if people knew that I was moving in this area. That if people knew that I was connecting with tools and with experiences that cannot always be explained by the scientific mind, that the fact that I wanted that was that somehow I was transforming into something that was not reliable or scientific or trustworthy. So there was this feeling that being in that space meant that there was something broken with me, that if I had not been broken, I would not be seeking this. So, and I think that there's a lot of judgment on that, not just towards me, but there was judgment of the people in the spiritual community. I did not want to be one of those crazies. So because I judged it, moving to that or trying to embrace it meant that obviously there's something wrong with me. And I think that's the source of the shame, and that there's something fundamentally wrong, because what you're doing, you will not be doing if you were not broken.
Yeah. Do you think it exists because people who, maybe you can call it like quote unquote witchcraft or whatever, there's this like stigma of being burned at the stake, or there's just so much shame and embarrassment that people cast upon each other? Do you think that historical factor has something to do with it, or do you think that that's sort of just an excuse?
I do think that there is structures in our culture that discount spirituality as a valid experience in life. And I think that as you were asking the question, what I felt was, of course, the structures has to quell that, because in a hierarchical system, if you are able to access the power of spirit, whatever that means to you, and you don't need an intermediary or a book or a structure to hold it for you or explain it to you, that defies that authority structure. It defies the hierarchy. So I think that it is really a threat to the status quo, a threat of a society that says that there are people that have more power, and if you discover that the power is within you and you don't need anybody else to access that power, that is subversive, quite frankly.
What do you think some ways are that spiritual shame manifests in people's lives, particularly regarding personal growth and well-being?
So I think that I have seen it manifested in many ways. One is delaying access to it, right? That was me.
Yeah.
It's like taking a long time to even consider as an option. And another part I also experienced was rejection. Because when you reject church, then you feel that you are rejecting spirituality. And what I thought and even found, even with a lot of scientists, is that we can become as dogmatic as religion itself when we start taking the opposite point. It's almost like a polarity. You have to bring the same dogma in rejection as you bring into embracing. So for some people, I think it's rejecting it altogether. Like that's not something I want to do. Or something that I have found in many professionals in the healthcare field, something that we do in secret, that we whisper, that we feel like nobody else is like me. I actually am training a physician as a HARMA trainer right now. And then we were having a conversation about other modalities. And she's like, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one. So it's almost something that is done in an inner privacy. And I think that is part of the process of being in a spiritual shame. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, and I don't have evidence of it, but sometimes I even wonder the people that actually flaunt it, if that's not another expression of shame.
Right.
That it's kind of like, wow, here in your face, right? And they're flaunting it all the time. And when I now hold it in my heart and trying to understand it, it's like how much of that is because their own insecurities, so being very expressive and outspoken and almost imposing of it is their way to cope with the spiritual shame. So I think that sometimes that can also be an expression.
Yeah, I mean, as you were talking, I was just thinking, as a physician, would you think maybe the people that you worked with, sounds like you worked with a lot of other people in the medical field, mm-hmm. I mean, would you say that some of the more successful ones in their positions are people who have embraced this side, maybe not overtly quote unquote spiritual, but perhaps even just taking something as simple as their own intuition? Mm-hmm. Would you say that creates a more well-rounded practitioner?
Well, actually, we have data about it.
You do?
Yeah, there's some research that shows that, for example, compassionate physicians, this was a fascinating experiment. They took people with chronic pain, and then they had a group going through an MRI, scanning their MRI and stimulate their pain points and how much it light up in their brains. And then they have another group where they first met with a physician, being very compassionate and connected with them. And then they have the same stimulus, and they show how pain management, the pain signal was reduced in those that were having a compassionate physician versus one that wasn't. So, or that were just going through the process without a compassionate human next to them. So we have data that actually tapping into our compassion, tapping into our kindness, being more aware of the coherence of how we show up, of how we are bringing our energetic field, changes the outcome of patients. So that's something that is demonstrably true. I also think that and this is in part why I accepted your invitation, and I'm talking more about it, because hopefully I let other people know, because even in my own experience, for example, one of the things that really encouraged me to start saying, hey, listen, I help people with stress management and emotional self-regulation through many modalities, including sound therapy and energy medicine. That's because I had a physician who wrote a book. He was the head of oncology of Cornell University. So somebody in a very prestigious position, and I'm not in that position, but at least being able to hear of another physician that says, you know what? I found that these sounds do something strange, and I decided to research about it. And he wrote a book about how sound modified the way that people responded to chemotherapy, and how the remission rate was higher among those patients that he was using sound therapy as a way to add to their chemotherapy experience versus that they did. So I think that the more of us that are saying, normalizing it, and I'm being outspoken about, let's look into this. There is a reality. There's something that really is happening. The more other people are going to come forward and then being able to say, yes, I already know this. But I think my professor of pharmacology knew it.
Yes.
Because I remember it, and actually was one of the reasons why I ended up not practicing clinical medicine, because he was very open about many things. And in the last day of class, in pharmacology class, he said, okay, good luck. Here's the Medvacuum, which is a book that we use in Colombia, is where all the medications are listed with all their characteristics and things. This is going to keep changing. Things are going to keep adding. But what I can tell you is that at the end of the day, the effectiveness of a medication depends on how much you believe it's effective and how much you tell your patient is effective.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, wait, what? If my belief is what is making it effective, then there is something else that needs to be investigated. So, like I said, I think that probably I have met many of those people along my career, but I didn't know, or I didn't recognize it because they were not spoken about it. It was just in that coded way.
Yeah, and I work in the oncology space as well. And I think, fortunately, I've never been an oncology patient, but if I were, you think about the harsh treatments like chemotherapy, radiation, that kind of thing. I mean, if there was something like sound therapy that could make a difference, and it's not harsh on your body like some of those other treatments. I mean, I'd be like, please give it, whatever it takes, I would want to know, and I would want to include whatever I possibly could to help me get well. And I just think, thank goodness, people like that gentleman and you are starting to bring these facts to patients, because I think it's so, so important. So for someone who's grappling with societal judgments about spirituality, what practical steps or what advice would you give?
So the most practical thing is that really whatever you think people are thinking about you, or even if they're saying it to you, it is only bothering you because there is a part of you that believes it. And the work really is handling and finding that part of you that believes that's true. I sometimes tell my clients that, if somebody were to tell me, oh my gosh, that blue hair looks ridiculous on you, I will laugh. It will not upset me. I wouldn't be afraid of it, because I will be like, I don't have blue hair. That doesn't bother me. Or if I do have blue hair and I absolutely love it, I will be like, well, that's your opinion. I love my hair.
Yeah.
It will not resonate with me. Mm-hmm. If it is upsetting me, if it is causing me fear, if it is causing shame, it's because there is a part of me that is resonating with it. And the work is to go and find that part and have a conversation with that part, because there is information in that part. That part is trying to do something to protect you, mm-hmm. and is have information for you to be listened to. And unfortunately, I think that many of us just try to shut down that and put it in jail, like I did with many of my parts. Like, I don't like that part, so I'm just not going to ignore it. Or we end up like I did for a few years, just killing half of us, right? Like I had to choose. Either I'm a physician and scientist, or I am this spiritual practitioner, because the two worlds cannot be together. And the only reason they could not be together is because they were not together in me. There were two parts of me that were not really integrated.
So if somebody is feeling like that and they realize that there's something that they need to work on, do you have any recommendations on how they might do that? Do you think it's building a supportive community around them, finding somebody who's done it and looking up to them, and like anything like that? Do you have any recommendations?
Well, my journey and how I recommend people is find tools that work for you. This is not something about that you can just do for free will. Maybe a handful of people. There's always a exception that confirms the rule. But for most of us, it requires new skills, and it requires the practice of tools of those skills to be able to change the way that our brain works and the way that we see ourselves and relate to life. And at least for me, it was no matter of being strong enough or positive enough or spiritual enough or pray enough. It really required to develop new skills and practice those skills to be able to transform what it was already wired into my system.
Well, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the work that you do at Integra Restore. Can you talk about the clients that you work with? What do you do there to help them on their journeys?
So I work with many hats and with many organizations, but basically either individuals, teams, or organizations that are ready to be able to change the way that they're functioning and relating to life. I work with a lot of people that from stay-home moms that for some reason they mostly have teenage children because that's a very stressful part of life, all the way to executives in Fortune 500 companies. And I also train trainers within organizations and many healthcare systems. Some of the larger healthcare systems in our country are actually bringing these techniques to the healthcare world, which is my passion to do that. Most of the work that I do is based in the HeartMath Institute tools and techniques, which are very much evidence-based and are a set of tools that allow us to change the physiology of how our body and brain works by changing the way that our heart beats, the heart rhythm of our hearts, into a physiological coherent state that is more optimal. And I say that's the basis of everything I do, because even though I still do some polarity and some sound work, I have never done it by itself, because those are techniques that are very effective of resetting your body into a more optimal state. But I always tell people, if you reset the body, it's like cleaning the slate. But if you keep writing the same story, you're going to go back to where you were. So HeartMath is for me the tools of rewriting that story, the how to create a new set of neural connections in your brain that are going to give you alternatives so that you can respond to the stimuli of the world rather than reacting from automatic responses. So that's why my approach is always about empowering you with skills and tools. And I'm not saying HeartMath are the only ones, but they are the ones that work for me. So those are the ones that I use.
Yes. I too, I'd seen your work with HeartMath, and I too have found it to be really impactful, and I'm really excited to share that I'm learning as well. I am very blessed to have you as my mentor through that process, but I'm learning as well to be a HeartMath facilitator, a HeartMath trainer, because I do find that those tools are incredible, and I'm so excited to be part of that HeartMath community. So I too vouch for it.
Yeah, it has been my honor to be part of this journey with you, because it's like knowing that you have the cure to polio and not tell people about it. It's like you really are doing a beautiful job of embracing and practicing your own life and taking that seriously, because that's the hardest part and the most beautiful part of this set of skills is that it's not something we can just teach in a classroom and no embody in our own lives. It's something that really needs your own experience to be able to teach it. And it has been my honor to witness your growth into it.
Oh, thank you so much. That means so much to me for you to say that. I really, really appreciate it. Well, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I'd love to close today with reflecting on a few questions that I ask all of my guests. And the first one is, when we think about what we talked about today, reflecting on this conversation, what is one key takeaway you'd like our listeners to remember about, their own spiritual shame and the work that you do?
Spiritual shame is normal. That is, you're breaking something and you're taking a big step, and it may be scary. And there's information on that. So just see it as the fire alarm that's telling you to pay attention to something.
Yeah. And if someone's just starting their journey towards a deeper understanding of consciousness, what advice or guidance would you offer them?
Don't compare your journey to anybody else's. Your heart blueprint to your own pathway your own lessons and your own destination.
That's so true. That's definitely something I needed to hear. That speaks to me for sure. It's easy to compare myself to others. So thank you for that. I needed it. And my last question is, in your opinion, what does it mean to you to live life consciously?
I think to be able to bring your awareness to the present moment and to have that awareness that your experience is not you. You are the consciousness that is aware of your experience.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Thank you again, Sandra. I appreciate you sharing your journey and your insights with us today. Your story is really a powerful one. And I'm wondering, can you remind everybody where they can get in touch with you if they want to access more information that we discussed today?
Oh, of course. Thank you so much for that. So I do have a website. It's www.integro, INTEGRO-restore.com.
Amazing.
Or if it is easier, you can Google my name. There's not that many Sandra Solanos in Ohio.
Fair enough. Well, we'll definitely put all of this great information in the show notes. So thank you so much again for being here.
Thank you, Kristen, for creating this beautiful space and for having your heart shining so brightly into the world.
Oh, well, the honor is mine. So thank you. And to our listeners, if today's conversation resonated with you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. And thank you for listening to our podcast today. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us bring these enlightening conversations to others. Until next time, stay curious and conscious. Bye for now.